In the fading light of the 5th century, the city of Rome stood silent. Once, the roar of legions echoed through its streets, marble temples gleamed beneath the Mediterranean sun, and the empire's reach stretched from the deserts of Africa to the misty forests of Britain. But by the year 476 AD, that world was gone. The last Western Roman emperor had been deposed, and with his fall came the collapse of an ancient order. Roads cracked and overgrew, cities emptied, and the Western world fragmented into 1,000 competing kingdoms. As Rome fell, chaos swept across Europe. Germanic tribes carved up the empire's lands, Goths ruled Italy, Franks took Gaul, Visigoths settled in Iberia, and Vandals roamed North Africa. Trade slowed, learning scattered, and Latin Christendom became a patchwork of tongues, customs, and loyalties. Yet in this fractured world, one institution remained: the Christian Church. The Church became the keeper of memory and authority. In monasteries, monks bent over parchment by candlelight, preserving the works of Roman thinkers and Christian theologians. Bishops acted as diplomats and leaders in cities that no longer answered to emperors. And in Rome, the papacy began to see itself not only as a spiritual beacon, but as the last surviving remnant of imperial legitimacy. For centuries, the idea of Rome never truly died. It lingered like a ghost across Europe. The dream of a single Christian empire, a realm where faith and power were united beneath a single crown. As Germanic kings rose and fell, the question persisted: could Rome return? Not through legions, but through the Church and new rulers. Among the post-Roman kingdoms, one rose above the rest: the Franks. Originally a loose confederation of tribes, the Franks under the Merovingian dynasty had built a powerful realm in Gaul. But their true ascent came with the Carolingian family, warriors, administrators, and visionaries. Charles Martel, known as the Hammer, had cemented their legacy in 732 at the Battle of Tours, where he halted the advance of Muslim armies from Iberia. His victory turned the Franks into defenders of Christendom. His grandson, Charlemagne, would take this legacy and transform it into something far greater. Born in 742, Charles, later called Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, was not just a warrior king. He was tall, charismatic, and fiercely ambitious. When he inherited the Frankish throne in 768, he ruled a powerful kingdom surrounded by restless neighbors: pagan Saxons to the east, Lombards threatening the papacy in Italy, and the Byzantines watching from the east. Charlemagne embarked on a relentless series of military campaigns that expanded his kingdom into a European empire. He defeated the Lombards, securing Rome and protecting the Pope. He waged brutal but determined wars against the Saxons, eventually forcing their conversion to Christianity after decades of conflict. He extended his power into Central Europe, the Pyrenees, and beyond. But Charlemagne understood that conquest alone could not sustain an empire. He reformed his administration, sending royal envoys, missi dominici, to enforce his laws across vast lands. He supported education, establishing schools in monasteries and cathedrals, sparking a cultural revival now known as the Carolingian Renaissance. He standardized currency, issued legal reforms, and sought to unite his diverse subjects through a shared Christian identity. By the end of the 8th century, Charlemagne ruled over a territory that stretched across modern-day France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, the Low Countries, and northern Italy. Yet even with all his power, one thing was missing: imperial legitimacy. The ancient emperors had ruled with divine sanction. Kings, no matter how great, still knelt before a higher authority. For Charlemagne, that authority was the Church. In 799, Pope Leo III faced political enemies in Rome who accused him of corruption and attacked him in the streets. He fled north to Charlemagne, seeking protection. The Frankish king received him with honor, escorted him back to Rome, and restored him to power. A bond was forged, one of mutual need and ambition. The following year, on Christmas Day in the year 800, Charlemagne entered St. Peter's Basilica for Mass. Candles flickered against ancient marble walls, Incense filled the air, and choirs sang hymns in Latin. As Charlemagne knelt before the altar, Pope Leo III stepped forward, lifted a golden crown, and placed it upon his head. In a single act, the Roman Empire was reborn in the West. The Pope proclaimed him Emperor of the Romans. It was a moment laden with symbolism. A Germanic king, ruling from the north, now bore the title of the emperors of old. For the Church, crowning Charlemagne was a masterstroke. It revived the imperial idea, but under papal blessing. For Charlemagne, it elevated his rule from kingship to divine authority. Yet the coronation also raised questions that would echo for centuries. Did the Pope grant the crown, or merely recognize what God had already ordained? Who held the higher power, the emperor or the Pope? Charlemagne ruled as emperor until his death in AD 14. He established his capital in Aachen, building a magnificent palace and chapel modeled on Roman architecture. His court became a center of learning and diplomacy. Emperors from Byzantium, rulers from distant lands, and envoys from the Abbasid Caliphate all sought his attention. He stood as the most powerful man in Western Christendom. But empires built on a single great ruler often struggled to outlive him. After Charlemagne's death, his son Louis the Pious inherited the empire. Louis ruled piously but lacked his father's strength. When he died, his sons fought bitterly over the inheritance. In AD 43, the Treaty of Verdun split the empire into three parts: West Francia, the foundation of modern France; East Francia, the foundation of modern Germany; and Lotharingia in between. The unity Charlemagne had forged fractured into rival realms. Vikings raided the coasts, Saracens attacked from the Mediterranean, and Magyars swept in from the east. Local lords grew stronger as central authority weakened. The imperial title persisted, but it had become hollow, a ceremonial echo of Charlemagne's grandeur. By the 10th century, the Carolingian dynasty was fading, and with it, the dream of a united Christian empire seemed to be slipping away again. But in the east, in the lands of East Francia, a new power was rising: the Saxon dynasty. Henry the Fowler laid the groundwork for stability, but his son Otto would carry the torch further. Otto I, born in 912, became king of East Francia in 936. His coronation took place in Aachen, Charlemagne's old capital, a deliberate signal that Otto intended to revive imperial greatness. Otto moved swiftly to consolidate his realm. He curbed the power of rebellious dukes and forged alliances with the Church, appointing bishops and abbots who owed their loyalty to him alone. Unlike secular lords, churchmen could not pass on lands to heirs, making them reliable instruments of royal power. Through this strategy, Otto created a network of loyal administrators that strengthened the monarchy and laid the foundations for the empire to come. Beyond internal politics, Otto faced a grave external threat: the Magyars. For decades, these mounted warriors from the Hungarian plains had launched devastating raids into German territories. In 955, Otto confronted them at the Battle of Lechfeld. Under his leadership, the German army stood firm, repelling the Magyars in a decisive victory that ended their incursions into Western Europe. Otto emerged as a hero, the defender of Christendom, his reputation echoing that of Charles Martel 2 centuries earlier. Otto's power and prestige grew. He extended his influence into Italy, intervening in its tangled politics through strategic marriages and military campaigns. By the early 960s, Otto's position as the dominant ruler of Central Europe was clear. In 962, he traveled to Rome, where Pope John VI crowned him Emperor of the Romans. With that act, the imperial title was revived once more, this time not for a Frankish king, but for a German one. This coronation marked the true birth of what we now call the Holy Roman Empire. It was not a direct continuation of ancient Rome, nor was it Charlemagne's empire reborn unchanged. It was something new, a medieval empire that combined Roman heritage, Germanic kingship, and Christian theology. Its power structure was complex. The emperor was the symbolic head, but real authority lay in negotiation with powerful princes, dukes, bishops, and free cities. The Holy reflected its sacred mission to defend and spread Christianity. Roman linked it to the grandeur of antiquity. Empire signaled its ambition to stand above mere kingdoms. But beneath this grand vision was a perpetual question: who truly held supreme authority, emperor or pope? This struggle would define much of the empire's history. In the 11th century, the investiture controversy brought it to a head. For generations, emperors had appointed bishops, intertwining secular and spiritual power. But reforming popes, determined to free the Church from imperial influence, challenged this tradition. Pope Gregory Viceri clashed with Emperor Henry of V, excommunicating him when he refused to submit. Facing rebellion at home, Henry crossed the Alps in winter to seek forgiveness at Canossa in 1077. Barefoot in the snow, he waited 3 days before the Pope granted absolution. It was a moment that symbolized the shifting balance between papal and imperial power. The Holy Roman Empire that emerged from Otto's coronation was not a centralized state like France or England. It was a vast, decentralized mosaic of territories, duchies, bishoprics, kingdoms, and free cities, bound together by shared allegiance to an emperor whose power depended as much on personality and politics as on divine right. Over time, a system of prince-electors would emerge to choose the emperor, formalized centuries later in the Golden Bull of 1356. Despite its complexities and internal tensions, the formation of the Holy Roman Empire reshaped Europe's destiny. It revived the idea of imperial unity under Christian authority, even as it struggled with the realities of fragmented power. It linked the memory of Rome with the medieval world, creating a political structure that would endure for nearly 1,000 years. From the ashes of Rome to the coronations of Charlemagne and Otto, the story of the Holy Roman Empire is one of ambition and adaptation. It was not Rome reborn in marble, but Rome reimagined in cathedrals and courts, on battlefields and in papal chapels. It was an empire forged not only by the sword, but by faith and political vision. For ordinary people, the empire was both distant and immediate. Emperors might be crowned far away, but their decisions shaped the laws, trade, and religious life of countless towns and villages. Cathedrals rose like stone prayers toward the heavens, markets flourished under imperial peace, and scholars debated theology in monasteries that owed allegiance to both emperor and pope. The Holy Roman Empire would survive crusades, plagues, and schisms before finally dissolving in 1806. But its formation remains one of the most pivotal moments in European history. The moment when the idea of Rome was resurrected in a distinctly medieval form, bridging antiquity and modernity. It was a grand experiment in uniting faith and power, an enduring dream of a Christian empire that could hold together a continent of diverse peoples. And though that dream would be challenged again and again, its legacy shaped Europe for a millennium. If you enjoyed this cinematic journey into the past, subscribe for more deep historical stories. Every empire has a beginning, and this was the birth of one of history's most enduring.